Before we start, I wanted to ask you, how did you find my channel on YouTube? Because I don't understand. Do you speak French or something? No?
No, I don't. It came up in my algorithm for some reason.
Oh,
I don't know why.
it's really
I'm not sure
funny.
why.
So there's a djinn somewhere, a demon that wanted us to meet. And we're gonna make
I guess so.
the most of it.
I was just making breakfast and I'm like looking for, because that's what I do when I'm doing chores or cooking or something. I put on an audiobook or a live stream or something interesting just to listen to, because it just makes random tasks more enjoyable. And so I was looking for something to watch. I was like, who's live on YouTube? And that morning you just popped up, and I remember you talking about something that had to do with me, I think. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, sometimes I do the Wilson News because you've been kind of my model, my role model for part of my content on YouTube and everything. So thanks to you again. I'm gonna start right now.
Clementine, do you hate men?
No, of course I don't hate men. What an absurd, reductive question.
Well, why did you
think that was
hang on, I'm about to follow up. They hate you. Why in 2020 did you tweet the coronavirus isn't killing men fast enough?
I tweeted that in 2020 as a misguided tweet, but it was actually much of a part of a longer
misguided tweet
thread.
Coronavirus isn't killing men fast enough. You say you don't hate men.
I apologize for it, Piers.
You thought a deadly pandemic virus wasn't killing men fast enough.
Apologize to men again. Do it again. You haven't apologized to me for saying that you want me to die from the coronavirus.
Well, I would have to consider you a man to apologize you for that.
Say you're sorry. Say you don't even know what a woman is.
Why would I apologize?
You know what else?
As a society, women are treated differently.
I think as a society, women are very privileged over men.
I think we're privileged, but I don't think we're privileged over men. Like, I feel like a woman should feel safe, walking home at night alone, and I don't feel like that's always the case.
Do you think that a man walking alone at night in the city always feels safe?
Probably not.
It's all going to be, it's not going to be about the welfare of our children and communities anymore. It's going to be about things like abortion and birth control. And what are the only women's issues that you ever hear about anymore in politics? The right to abortion and things like access to birth control, access to abortion. It's like the only thing you hear now. Where are all the women, even on the right, like fighting for the things they were fighting for 150 years ago? Nowhere. It's all about, like even Trump frustrates me on this because he's like, we got to have more programs to get all the moms back to work. And I'm like, why? You're the most contradictory woman I've ever debated. You'll talk about individual rights on one hand and then say, I want the government to come in and force equality for women. And you'll say, I believe in the Christian God in the Bible. And then you'll say, well, not that part. I don't like the 1 Timothy 2:12 part. Forget that. And I want democracy, not a monarchy. That seems icky. I think Jesus thought this, even though that's not what the Bible says. I'm just going to make it up. Prior to the 1970s, we had 5% of mothers with school-age kids working outside the home. And for all of human history, even during the Industrial Revolution, you could be a janitor and support a family and have 4 kids on one income. And something shifted in the 1970s, and it's never shifted back. The one big thing that we changed is we pushed women into college and into the workforce. And by the 1980s, they were on par with men in workforce participation.
Andrew, I would like for her to apologize to me because I do not appreciate her saying that my own husband does not respect me. Of course he respects me. He respects me as a mother and as a wife. He treats me like gold. Who the hell are you to tell me if he respects me or not?
You wouldn't have to get paid for this if you had a husband.
I didn't say that he... Where did I even
You did.
mention?
You said he clearly doesn't respect his wife.
You did say that. I heard you say it.
You mean the piece of shit that you're married to? Yeah, he clearly doesn't respect you.
He sits there and makes
jokes about how he married you. He doesn't
He's
do
not
shit
the
around
piece
the
of
house
shit
because
in
that's
this
why you married a
panel.
wife.
That would be you,
That's
man.
why you got a
You're
wife.
the one.
Yeah.
Listen, let's get back to the topic here. You're the one who is insisting that there's no data proving that it's shut up.
I would genuinely. Okay, let me hang on. Time out.
But women, we've never seen as high a rate of fetal alcohol syndrome in babies as we're seeing now. And alcoholism is much worse for women. Our bodies are smaller. Our livers don't handle toxic amounts of alcohol, even as well as a man. It's bad for men.
Right.
It's even worse for women. The idea that it's only men is baloney.
I agree. I never said that. About 20% average women do consume pornography. It's about 70% of men that do consume
What happens if we
pornography.
count written pornography? What happens if we count stuff like 50 Shades of Grey? Then how many women engage in
I don't know the details.
consuming
I don't know the
pornography?
details
Oh,
to
well,
that
let me
kind of
help you.
stuff.
It's the best-selling book of all time among female readers.
Okay.
Like, I always thought Marxism was, faking gay and stupid. I just never bought into it at all.
To the other kids at St. Bernard Academy, they were the girls who didn't belong.
Whatever you do, stay away from them.
Why?
They're witches.
But after years of being on the outside,
Why'd you lie about me?
I don't want to go out with you again. Please stop begging. It's pathetic.
4 girls are about to discover the dark side.
You ever heard of invoking the spirit? Black magic.
This is the reason why feminism didn't become a thing until the last 100 years, because technology made and maintained by men is the only thing that allows you to believe you don't need men. Do you get that? So you're one of those ladies that it doesn't matter how much evidence I present, what logical arguments I have, and you told me this, you're not going to change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind.
Supernatural figures appear with eyes full of fury. They live in the darkness, outside of reason and of faith. The witches of the weak, who hide the truths of history. The witches of the weak, who labor for the powerful. With their complicity come the lies and the weaknesses. They call themselves guardians of knowledge, defenders of society. The witches of the weak, who light the path to utopia. They police the discourses, the whispers, the glances, the silences. They veil the lines of power, the currents that tip all the balances. They see themselves as Disney princesses at the center of the universe. The witches of the weak, who reinvent the world without end. The witches of the weak, prostitutes of the all-powerful. With their complicity come the lies and the weaknesses. They call themselves guardians of knowledge, defenders of the truth. The witches of the weak, who light the path to utopia.
I don't give a about democracy. I'm not a democracy enjoyer. America was not founded as a democracy. And if you went to school for this, I would expect that you would know more about this. It was not a universal suffrage democracy. It was a very extremely limited suffrage representative republic. That's not what we have now.
The witches of the weak, prostitutes of the all-powerful. The witches of the weak, toward the path of utopia. Witches, who police the discourse, the silences, the glances. It's the time of the witches of the weak. With Inquisitor YANN ROSHDY.
I think you know at your core that women are not equal with men, and that anytime men decide to rescind women's rights, there's not a damn thing they can do about it, but you're not going to admit to that either.
It's not going to happen. You won't admit to that.
Why do you think it's not going to happen? Because you take it for granted that simps are going to always come to the rescue, don't you? Have you heard of a little place called Afghanistan?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome everybody. My name is YANN ROSHDY. It is a special broadcast for Witches of the Week edition for July 6, 2026. I am joined today by Rachel Wilson. Thank you for accepting my offer so generously. And
well, thank you.
It's a great
Thank you
pleasure.
for the introduction and thank you for the invitation. I love the French pronunciation of my name is so much fancier.
Yes, it's sexier. It's more majestic. I've discovered the infamous Wilson family during COVID on the Whatever podcast with Brian Atlas. Soon after, I was radicalized to the point that I founded my own very own chapter of the new French Inquisition of America to invade TikTok in the name of Jesus Christ. And this is how you found yourself in my chat room during one of these sieges. As a self-proclaimed inquisitor, I wanted to talk to you about your book, Occult,
right.
Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation. Because modern feminism totally brainwashed a couple of generations already of women, of young women, and part of the young boys too, young men. And it's destroying our society. I wanted to start by asking you, when did you personally discovered you were being brainwashed? Because I've heard you talk about being the number one schoolgirl, the best of the class. And so you were probably a bit feminist.
Not really.
Not really?
Weirdly not really. And I think it's because I grew up with like a radically Marxist mother who was she would do like these long rants where she was like almost possessed, you know, talking about like men and how awful they were, especially white men. And she would, you know, I heard a lot of that kind of thing growing up. And I think I always thought it sounded a little crazy. And, you know, I didn't want to be like this angry kind of crazy person. And I really appreciated my dad and some of the men that were in my life. So it was kind of like, but I think I just absorbed, like all of us do. I think I absorbed some of the pop culture stuff. Like I was born in 1980, so I grew up with like She-Ra and Madonna and Oprah and all the, you know, the girl boss stuff was already in full swing by then. So I think I just kind of didn't think about it too much. You know, I didn't start thinking politically a whole lot. I mean, a little bit here and there, but not too much until September 11th, 2001, when we had the big terrorist attack here in the United States. And I was just like a news junkie at that point, trying to figure out what was happening because I had just had a baby, you know, and I was like, oh, what's going on? Are we going to war? Like, what really happened? What's going on? So I would listen to like talk radio and then I'd watch the news at night. So I was getting like left-wing stuff and right-wing stuff and realizing that they were covering things in completely different ways from different points of view. So that's when I kind of started even thinking a lot about politics and ideology and things like that. But prior to that, I was just like a normal girl, just trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing, trying to like figure out how to start a family and pay bills and all that kind of stuff. Trying to have a more sane life than I had growing up, which was a bit of a bumpy road and took a minute to get there, but I have managed to do that now for a good long time. So that's great. I think when I realized I was kind of brainwashed or like there was a lot of programming that I didn't realize I had, I mean, that was kind of a gradual thing because there wasn't a me around back in the day that I could just listen to. I did like Ann Coulter quite a lot. I started reading her books and stuff like that back in like 2005. So I think she was probably somewhat of a good introduction to at least starting to think about that because she was, you know, never keen on feminism or anything like that, even way back then, which wasn't a very popular position. And then I think it was more just like realizing that if I wanted like a good family life and a good marriage, this idea where we're struggling for power between us is not going to work. And that if I wanted a guy who was a good leader, and that I could count on him and rely on him to be like all the things that women want a man to be, that you can't constantly be tearing him down and criticizing him and stuff like that. And I think my husband, Andrew, is the one who kind of like helped me see that I was doing that in a way that I didn't even realize. It's more like, it was subtle. It was more like how everybody does where you watch sitcoms, you know, and in all of the television sitcoms, the wife is constantly like, oh, my husband is so stupid.
Yes.
He just is some bumbling fool and he's so ridiculous.
Homer
and
Simpson.
Homer Simpson, Ray Romano, like pretty much all of the male.
I've heard you talk about one anecdote in particular, the remote control anecdote. I think that was where you understood, not because he talked to you about what you were doing. He showed you with what he did. He just left.
Yeah.
So you threw a remote control, you were angry, you were emotional, and he just left.
Well, it wasn't even that. So like a lot of people, I think, have heard me tell that story and they got this idea that we were in some terrible fight and I like threw the remote control. Yeah, it wasn't even like a fight. It was more like he gave me a little sass, like we're joking around, and he kind of poked fun at me, and I thought it was cute to be like, and throw the remote, you know, just like, just toss it at him. I wasn't trying to hit him in the head or like hurt him. I wasn't even like angry. It was more like, and I think so many women do this, and I didn't realize I was doing it. You think it's cute to be kind of a sassy brat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because
it's all like the Disney princesses.
Yeah, the Disney princesses, the TV show girls, the pop stars, like every woman depicted in media is like, look at me, I'm a sassy little brat, but I'm hot so I can get away with it. And I'm clever. And, you know, it's like this female archetype that has become so popularized of like the capable, strong, independent woman who really wants love, but she's also kind of a sassy brat and she can be a bitch when she needs to, but that's just proof that she can assert herself. Like it's a caricature, just like the male sitcom guy is a caricature. And I think I was just kind of repeating patterns that I had seen, things I'd heard or seen my mother say that I didn't realize. So I think a lot of us, we're not really always that conscious of why we're saying or doing the things we are, or why we use certain tone or react to certain things. And so like I had already been through 2 failed relationships. Now, granted, I chose poorly, to be honest. But I lived in rural West Michigan, and in that culture, alcoholism is very normalized. Domestic violence is pretty normalized. Like most of the people I grew up around, like there wasn't a lot of great marriages that I had modeled for me. There was, it was like the long dark winters there, drinking all winter and staying inside, or snowmobiling drunk or things like that are like so normal. And my mother was an alcoholic my whole life. And most of her side of the family was. And my dad struggled with like opioid addiction, not because he was some kind of junkie, but because he fell off a roof and had like a catastrophic injury and had, you know, several surgeries. So he ended up needing painkillers for a long time and then got hooked on them. So I think I just grew up with very dysfunctional people, a lot of crazy stuff going on. And by comparison, I was the sensible, normal, functional one. And so I don't think I saw in my own behavior like little things like that I had picked up. I never cheated. I was never abusive. I wasn't mean. But I think that I didn't realize I had a bit of an attitude that I had just picked up along the way from all these different things. And Andrew just saying to me, hey, if you're going to behave like that, I'm just not going to date you and I'm just going to leave. So like maybe think about that, and if you want to change that, then you can call me, but otherwise I'm just not interested. And at first I did kind of sit there and go, well, like he, you know, it's not that serious, you know, I just had this attitude. And then I thought, wait a minute, I don't want to be the girl who throws things. I don't want to be the bratty girl who acts like that. Like, what am I doing? Like, what, you know, I kind of got embarrassed, and that's a hard thing. And I think that's the point where most women blame the man or excuse their behavior or don't want to look at it because it's uncomfortable to look at yourself.
Accountability. It's the one nemesis for women.
Yes, and it's uncomfortable. And especially when society gives us a get out of accountability free card for everything we do. Like there's really no reason a woman has to do that unless you're like me and you're like, look, I found a great guy and I really want to get along with him and I want to have a peaceful, harmonious relationship. If that's the case, I can't be acting like this, you know, even though like, no, I'm not being abusive or horrible. I'm not like some of the girls I talk to on the whatever podcast who do like, I wasn't like the psycho girlfriend.
No, just normal girl.
Yeah, I was just being kind of bratty and I was just kind of being sassy and I just thought to myself, yeah, maybe for the type of guy that I want, if I want one of these really like great guys, I can't act like that. Like, whoa, mind-blowing stuff, right? But I think the only thing that saved me was the ability for me to look at myself and go, yeah, I should probably adjust my behavior. I should probably work on my attitude. I should probably be mindful of speaking to a man who I love with a more respectful tone. Even if I've seen other women behave like this my whole life, that doesn't mean that it's working or that it's okay. You know, and after that, it was a process of catching myself on those things, paying attention, not getting defensive if Andrew had feedback for me and he was like, you're, you know, like you're being a brat again, or you're being disrespectful, or you're not listening to me. You're constantly telling me how you feel and what you want, but you're not listening to me and how I feel and what I want. And learning to restrain myself, stop getting so defensive, and be open to whatever his criticisms were, and realizing that they were not for the purpose of controlling me or tearing me down or anything like that. Like, he's trying to teach me how he wants to be treated. He's trying to teach me how to win in the relationship. He's saying, look, and Andrew's so reasonable. If people watch him regularly, you know, he's super reasonable. As long as you're reasonable, right? If you give him a bunch of
and
shit,
you have
you're
respect,
gonna get
as long as you have respect.
Yeah. So, and he would just be like, look, if we're talking about this stuff, yeah, I want to be treated with respect. I don't want you to constantly be on the defensive and constantly trying to, you know. So it took me a while. It took a few years for me to truly like absorb and break certain bad habits and develop better habits. That's why I always say like good wives are not born, we're made. And it's a skill set that we have to learn and practice. And we don't have moms and grandmas anymore that taught us that. Like, my great grandma was always super respectful to her husband, but she was, you know, by the time I was 20, she was about to pass away and was like 102. She lived to 102.
I never met my grandparents.
Yeah, she was born in 1898. So, and I did get to spend like 20 years of my life with her. But when I would think about that, when I would think about the difference between how my great-grandparents' relationship was versus like my parents who got divorced after 9 years, it's like night and day. And the way they treated each other was like, they were always respectful and courteous to each other, especially in public or around other people or something. If they had a disagreement, that was something they would do in private. She never raised her voice to him. Like, she would never even think of that. She would never think of getting loud or obnoxious with her husband. That was like not the way that ladies behaved. And so I remember thinking to myself, I should probably be more like that. I should probably emulate that behavior, because they were married for 80 years, 82 years or something. Like, they got married when they were pretty young, and they both lived till they were 99 and 102. So really long time together through some really rough things, and 4 kids and all kinds of you know, heartbreak and suffering and things like that. And they made it. So I was like, maybe I should try and be more like great grandma and be more respectful and not be such a sassy little brat. You know what I mean? And I think that's hard for women to do. It's hard for us to look at ourselves and be
TikTok,
honest about what we're doing.
On TikTok, when I talk about that, they think it's impossible now to be with one person for all your life. The kids really think that. It's unbelievable for me. You start your book chronologically, and you talk about the symbols, the spirits, the goddesses, the entities that are worshipped through culture. And you talked about the inversion of the Middle Ages, how chivalry and the women during Middle Ages were oppressed. The mythology of the oppressed women, the witches that were that would fix society and were burned in a way that was intimidating and wrong and awful, and we have to destroy everything Christian because of that. So this victimology, when I've researched about magic, victimology was perceived as a form of witchcraft. So
yes,
that's what I wanted to talk to you about these first 2 chapters. How most of what we learn from progressivism and feminism, it's all about the same thing we had during Middle Ages. It's about witches, magicians, scammers, and they use sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yes. Very few people want to talk about that section of the book, so I'm glad that you brought it up because I don't get to talk about it as much as some of the other parts. But yes, there's been this rewriting of history. That's basically what the book is about. And like a form of witchcraft is to invert the perception of reality or kind of brainwash or mind control people that the reality they see or know isn't true. It's actually this other thing that the person who is doing the witchcraft wants you to believe and absorb and accept as true. It is kind of a mind control trick in a lot of ways, like witchcraft. Not that witches weren't doing things like creating poison.
Some witches were good.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if they were good because I don't think it's good to manipulate people's perceptions of reality or try to impose your will on others or anything like that. But witches were doing things that were worthy of persecution. So that's kind of what that chapter is about, saying like, hey, they weren't just, they weren't burned at the stake because they had strong political opinions and the men want to hear it, right? That's the myth that everyone hears now. Oh, really? Well, witch trials were just about controlling women and not letting them have their own opinions and not letting their voices be heard. This is like the garbage that you hear repeated. And it comes
These men have confidence issues.
Yeah, and they just don't want women to have a voice. And no, what witches were doing back then, and still a lot of times are doing now, is they were the main purveyors of poison. So it was kind of a popular way of murdering someone back in the day was with poison, especially for women, because it's not like you're gonna use. It's less likely that you were going to use an axe or a knife or something like. It's much easier to poison a man or a woman if you want to kill someone. A lot of the elite aristocracy, especially in France, they're one of the most famous witches and poisoners of all time. Forgive my French. I cannot do French pronunciations with this horrible upper Midwest accent. Catherine Lavoisin?
Catherine Lavoisine?
Yeah, probably. That's probably what it is. She was a famous witch who was brought to trial and prosecuted and I think then subsequently terminated for giving poison to a lot of the French aristocracy, especially the king's concubines, who were all kind of trying to become the new main girl. They wanted, they were all jockeying for position and poisoning each other, and a lot of the other aristocrats were poisoning each other, and she was the source for all of that. They also were, if you got an abortion back then, you went to a witch for that. They had herbal remedies, and they would also do like kind of surgical abortions, I guess you would say, like mechanical abortions. And a lot of other things. They did do actual sex magic. That's where the witch's broom comes from. They had access to psychedelic substances like mushrooms and other things that they would create a salve, put it on the wooden end of the broomstick and use it like a phallic object and have things like full moon orgies and use the psychedelics to do spells and things like that. That's real stuff that's documented throughout the historical record. So this idea that like, there's no such thing as witches. It was just strong, independent women who had their own thoughts and ideas about politics or sexuality that the men didn't like. That's the actual myth, right? I'm not saying there was never a case of people who were wrongly accused of witchcraft or there weren't certain instances where there would have been some hysteria that broke out. I'm sure that's the case. But in general, that's the actual stuff that witches were up to, and that's why they tended to be prosecuted and persecuted by people.
Yes,
not because they just had a strong, political opinion or something.
That's what I've discovered too. Most of the issues were civil issues, a fire, tempest, hurricane, whatever, and then some people were part of thieves and assassins and whatever, and it's all really real things, but they exaggerate. They have more power. They have supernatural power to be responsible of these. So it's really important, and I really like this character, Catherine Lavoisine. Is it part of your second book? Because I heard you talk about the second book.
I should put her somewhere in one of the books because it's a really interesting historical case. I did do a stream where we talked mostly about her and then a few other famous historical witches who were real people, who were real witches, who we can document were doing these things with my friend, Dr. David Patrick Harry. He's got a YouTube channel called Church of the Eternal Logos. So I think if you look up some of my witchy streams with him, I go into more detail about her and talk about her. But yeah, witches were and are real. We still have, I cite witches themselves in my book. Witches who are teaching at universities in New York as second-generation witches, and
it's in their bio on social media. They wanted us to know that.
And in fact, I have a little bit of a groupie following of witches who like my work because they feel like I give them the proper credit that they deserve for pushing feminism into the political mainstream. So there's that.
Yeah, when people don't believe me that we're invaded by witches, I always tell them it's not the most important thing is not that you believe that magic sorcery works. It's that they will act on it as if it's real. So they have real power because people trust and believe in these things.
Oh yeah, and if you go to TikTok, so witchcraft is, I think it was at the time that I wrote the book, and I think it still is the fastest growing religion among young women in the United States. Yes, and if you go to TikTok and you put in the hashtag witch talk, you will find witches showing you how to make ceremonial spells with your menstrual cycle materials. They will show you how to make a ritual abortion, to use the, you can apparently use the whatever you expel from, say, like a pill abortion, and they'll show you how to make an altar and how to create a spell to get whatever it is your intentions are for yourself in your life with a ritual abortion. Like, this stuff is real. There are young women all over the West who are super into it. And part of the reason they're into it is because of this mass rejection of Christianity as this patriarchal oppressive system that people with daddy issues, it's like, you can't tell me what to do. They want all the degenerate activities to be rubber stamped and approved of and cool. And they don't want any pushback about that. Right. And the fuddy-duddy old Christians aren't going to let you ritualize your abortion or become a trans or whatever, whatever it is that you want to do. But witchcraft tells you that all those things are empowering and that you can get things for yourself and that you can, and you'll hear young girls repeat this stuff without even realizing what it is that they're saying. They'll tell you, oh, I manifested it.
Yeah, I'm manifesting,
what I want for my life, and I'm going to sage my room of the bad spirits. I'm going to wear my crystals and I'm going to manifest. And then I'm going to check my horoscope and see, what's in the stars for me. And that's going to tell me when I should do my period blood rituals to get the guy that I want, or whatever, crazy thing it is that they want. And it's portrayed as so harmless, right? They'll be like, oh, I'm a green witch. That just means I'm really into plants and I love being in the forest and I prefer animals over people. Yeah. And this started a lot in the 60s and 70s with the goddess worship revival of that time, where you had eco-terrorism and eco-feminism and really extreme hippies trying to return to the land. And we had a lot of very influential like feminist separatists who were also like really into the like depopulation stuff, the environmentalism, veganism, back in the 60s and 70s. Abby Rockefeller was one, and she started a radical terrorist organization called Cell 16 that was actually responsible for a lot of goofy stuff that was going on in the 70s. There was another group called the Red Stockings that was, you know, crossover with that group. So like these people have money behind them in some cases. They have, you know, political backing in some cases. And even like you said, if you don't believe in it, that's kind of irrelevant because these people are still going to push political agendas. Probably the most famous feminist witch who's still alive today would be Zuzana Budapest. She is quite old now. She's in her 80s, maybe 90 now. And she came after World War II from the Czech Republic to the United States as a witch and fought the Supreme Court in San Francisco in California on a religious liberty clause to have witchcraft legalized because they were trying to prosecute her for that and maybe even deport her, and she won the case. She is the person who got witchcraft legalized in the United States under the Freedom of Religion clause, and she was also conducting seances and leading spell casting against Donald Trump for the last 3 elections that he was in. And she said herself that feminism is simply the political arm of a spiritual movement. So for these people, yeah, it's a spiritual movement. It's goddess worship. It's, you know, Luciferianism. It's all the things I talk about in my book. And some of them are serious and some of them have money and influence and they are able to get things done like legalizing witchcraft. A lot of these groups also opposed to the overturn of Roe v. Wade were arguing that they had a right to abortion, once again, under freedom of religion, because some pagan groups, some satanic temples, and then also indigenous groups like Native American Indians were arguing that abortion for them is a religious sacrament. And you can go back and look at somebody like Matilda Joslyn Gage, the mother-in-law of L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz. She was a huge influence on him. He lived with her for years while he was married to her daughter. She would hang out with Iroquois Indians and they would teach her about how ritual abortion was part of their native religion. And she thought that that was really inspiring and wonderful. She thought it was great that the women of the Iroquois Nation were the ones who decided if and when a child would be born at all, and that they had the right to terminate any pregnancy at will. And in their culture, the men had no say over that. It was the women's domain. So if it could be something as simple as, oh, I got a bad juju from the peyote that we smoked that this baby I'm pregnant with is going to be a bad spirit. So we're going to abort it and then we're going to do a cleansing ritual and things like this. So she wrote about that stuff in the late 1800s. So this isn't new either.
Really important people understand how this comes because they have a lot of influence, and that's why Andrew and yourself, you work a lot to talk about Christian values being promoted politically by partisanship, infiltrating institutions to change them from inside instead of building news. And it's really important people understand that because if you don't talk about these witches, they will do things you will perceive as something conspiratorial, and in reality they use the cover of the night to influence all the rest of the society. So in a way, in a certain way, they won a lot of battles already. When we start to see the influence they have, and they started by killing the chivalric code. Donc, chivalry was hunted for centuries, and they destroyed it in a matter of generations because it was an exchange between masculine virtues and feminine virtues. Chivalry was all about the men. They represent order, virtue in a way women can, because they defend society, they defend honor, they defend Christian values, and the women, in exchange, they are pious. They have a low body count. They are virtuous. And then you put the two together, and you have the familia in the empire, the Holy Roman Empire. It started for maybe a millennia ago, and they destroyed it in the last century.
Yes.
That was the first real battle.
And now they complain about it.
Yes.
It's my favorite thing to make fun of when I see women on the internet who are like clearly these very feminist, very modernist women, and all they do is bitch and complain that men ain't shit anymore. You know, they have no manners and they don't treat us right. And where's all the chivalry? And why won't they treat me like a lady? And it's like, maybe because you've been with 100 different guys and you've had 3 abortions and you insist that you can do everything without men and you don't need them for anything and you want to have your own money and all this other stuff. And it's like, you can't have both of those things. You can't have, I want to be in charge and be the boss and don't tell me what to do, but also, you know, take care of anything dirty, dangerous, or difficult that I don't want to do. Step in and protect me from myself when I'm acting crazy. What you see women do that. Why'd you let me do that? Well, because men are railroaded in the justice system now. If they ever try to tell you no for any reason, right? So it's just, I always say, don't listen to women when we tell you what we want. We don't know what we want. I'm a very like self-assured, intelligent woman, and I don't know what the hell I want half the time.
And the Christians, they have a big problem in this topic because they defend the women constantly, because and they can't, because the red pill won that debate 10 years, 15 years ago when they ruled we can't apply the chivalric code with family tribunal and how the state can take your children away from you and force you to pay your ex-wife allocation each month. So in a way, the only argument I heard that can answer the red pill argument is yours. So the Christian, specifically the Christian, maybe the Muslim marriage, but specifically the Christian marriage, because outside of the state, we have the church, and the church will institute its own archive. Outside of the states, we don't want the state in our family, and we will rule. We will put them in order, not with the state. We can't leave that to the state now.
Right. Yeah, well, we're in quite a conundrum, and that's why a lot of people don't like that I put a lot of blame on primarily the Protestant Christians, but also a little bit on the Roman Catholics, because we wouldn't have Protestantism without what happened with Rome leaving the church and doing its own thing and having a lot of corruption. I know that that's a very emotionally charged thing for me to say, and it angers a lot of people and they get very upset, but I think I make a good case in the book. I also gave a speech at a theological seminary about that sort of thing, where I kind of went more in depth. It is on my Substack if anybody's interested in that. It's at rwilson.substack.com. But Protestant Christianity has no ecclesiology. It has no authority. Everybody has the right to private interpretation, the right to their privacy of their conscience, the right to interpret the Bible as they see fit. And what we saw immediately after the Protestant Revolution, I would call it, was, before Luther was even dead and gone, we had Baptists and Anabaptists killing each other and drowning each other and persecuting each other, and people not agreeing on what Christianity was or how it should be interpreted. And what happened was, the most radical of those Protestants are the ones that came to the United States to escape that persecution and settled here. So I take a whole chapter to go over some of the really wacky Protestant cults that proliferated throughout the Burned Over District and the Second Great Awakening in the United States, and how a lot of them were socialist, they were feminist, because it was very much about rebelling against authority, rebelling against church ecclesiology, massively overcorrecting for the abuses of the papacy. And out of that came this feminist revolutionary spirit that gave us And that combined with the Enlightenment, right? Because the motto of the French Revolution is liberty, equality,
fraternity.
Liberty, equality, fraternity. My brain wants to do the French and the English at the same time, and it doesn't work. So it was this combination of ideas that really gave birth to feminism and to this idea that men and women are equal, and individualism and libertarianism and no authority. And what happens when you have no authority is, who's going to tell the women?
Everybody's a prophet.
Yes.
That's what happens.
And that's actually what happened, right? Everyone was a prophet. And so you've got all these breakaway cults like Mormons, Shakers, Quakers, and a ton of much more obscure ones that you've probably never heard of. And I talk about some of them in the book, but those religions experimented with a lot of proto-feminist and new age type of ideas. And this is what happens when you just erase tradition and authority completely, and you just toss yourself off the cliff and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Why not have women preachers? Why not have lesbian churches? Who's going to tell them no? By what authority? You don't have a normative authority to tell you, no, you can't get a divorce just because you don't feel sexy anymore. You can't leave your husband and children to go be in a lesbian relationship. You can't start doing witchcraft in addition to you can't mix witchcraft with your Christianity. And those things are all things that happened. And we're talking in the 1800s, which most people in the United States think, we were so conservative back then. Everything was just so conservative. Not true at all. We had people talking about free love. We had people, literal lesbian ministers starting their own church congregations in the United States in the 1870s. And I detail a bunch of those things in the book. So this stuff isn't new. We had feminists like Margaret Fuller writing about gender as a spectrum and eventually gender abolition in the 1840s. Yeah. So these ideas came directly out of the ethos we just talked about, where you're dispensing with authority and everybody becomes their own authority. You can't stop feminism in an atmosphere like that. There is no authority that can stop it, because you just told everybody that they have the right to do what they want as long as they're not directly harming someone else, and that that these institutions are controlling and bad, so everybody just do what you want.
It's all about individualism. That's what I understood recently, that the leftism was created by Protestantism. The reform created the real left was created not by socialists, but by these guys, the reform guys, Calvin, Luther, Zwingli. They created the ethos where we can create the view that the state, not the nation, the state, has to answer to the common good for the people, and and then the state has to enter our life, and they have to force us into liberty.
Yes, that's basically, you nailed it. And that's, a lot of people don't like to hear that, especially in America. If you're raised in America, you're raised with, maybe not anymore, but when I was growing up, it was, you got to be proud of your country because here anyone can be anything. Freedom is the highest good. Nothing should trump personal individual liberty. That's the highest value that we hold. Well, if that's the case, how are you going to tell me I can't start my lesbian church? How are you going to tell me I can't divorce my husband just because I'm more attracted to the guy next door? How are you going to legislate any type of morality if everybody has the right to create their own personal morality? If we don't have any objective morality and we don't have any normative authority, it becomes you do you, bro, or live, laugh, love, go find yourself. The women are always trying to find themselves, which drives me crazy, because I'm like, you're right there. I don't know what you're looking for. You are you no matter where you go. And if you want to find yourself, the first thing you should do is look at your weaknesses and your flaws, but nobody wants to do that, of course. It's always the empowering stuff. It's always me and what I want and chasing my dreams and my feels and following my heart and all this stuff. And it turns out that when you have a whole society of people doing that, It's chaos. There's not enough structure for children to grow up with any sort of sense of security. And you start getting crazy stuff like mom thinks that little Johnny should cut his penis off and dad doesn't. So now we have to go to court, and the court is going to rule that mommy can take little Johnny's penis off and give him female hormones, and the dad can't do anything about it. Like, that's the logical end point. And I know people hear that and they think, that's crazy, Rachel. I can't believe you would say that. That's awful. It wasn't intended to be that way. You know, the founders didn't want that. And I'm like, that may be true, but the framing and the founding of the American, system leads to this. It's going to inevitably have this progressive end where we push things to absurdity before we correct. And
it's all centered on the public schools presently. That's where we initiate these kids, these children to sex fetishes, to leftism, to progressivism, feminism. That's where they learn all about that, and they just emulate. They just copy these magicians, witches, and Satanists. That's what we learn about. Donc, in the chapter 3, you talked about the history of the first wave of feminists in the United States, the link with the American Revolution, the deists, the Freemason, and the other cults, secret society working with sex magic, with other sorcery and witchcraft to promote these reformist, these revolutionary values, liberté, égalité, fraternité, we say in French, without the accent. So it's really important people understand that United States wasn't created perfectly.
Right. And we love to say that, right? It's the greatest nation in the world. And it's like, maybe it is. And it's not that I don't love my country. You're supposed to love your country. I love my homeland and my people. It's the only one I've known. My family's been here since the Irish side came in the mid 1800s and the Dutch side came at the turn of the 20th century. So we've been here a long time. Not saying I don't love my country. I'm saying that we're seeing now the fruits of what happens when your system allows for constant change. You can't plan further than 4 years. You can't create cross-generational projects in the United States. We're not going to build cathedrals that take 3 generations to build. Not anymore. No, you're not going to
create families, populous families. It's all disappeared.
Yeah, and every politician we elect is just trying to get through the next 2 to 4 years. So there's no long-term skin in the game. There's no say what you want about monarchy and the flaws with monarchy, but at least when your son has to inherit the kingdom, and you know that your great-grandson is going to inherit the kingdom, you give more of a shit about your kingdom. You care about its long-term security and prosperity. Whereas the people that we have coming into office usually only care about the next 2 to 4 years, and they want to get through the cycle. So they won't. We see this with Trump right now, and I was a big Trump supporter. I still am. I still think he's better than the alternative. But there's a lot of stuff he just won't do. There's a lot of things that Republicans won't do because it's something that would be a difficult correction, that we might have to endure a slight bit of discomfort for maybe 10 years to correct something. And in the long run, it would be great for this country, but not one politician is willing to do it because it's going to make them lose the midterm, or they're not going to get the next re-election. It's not going to do well in the news cycle, which a news cycle now lasts a week tops before the American public has completely forgotten whatever just happened and they're moved on to something else. So we've created a system that unintentionally has a lot of flaws, which make it impossible to plan for the long-term good of the country. And I think the root, if I had to pick one problem that has destroyed our system, it's universal suffrage. That's where everything went completely sideways. And that's the thing that we're never going to be able to correct, the fatal flaws in our system here, or I think in any Western democracy that has universal suffrage, because you're going to end up necessarily with a majority that wants to pillage the treasury, wants to take from people who are more productive, who you have women who are always going to vote for more security and for everybody to have equality. You know, women are great and we're programmed for motherhood. That's why we're terrible to have in politics. We want everybody to have enough to eat. We want everybody to be safe and cozy and warm. So they're going to vote for stuff like UBI, universal health care. They're going to let all the
redistribution.
Redistribution. They're going to vote to open the borders. They're going to want a nanny state. They're going to want freedom to do all the degeneracy, right?
Yep.
And then they're going to protect violent criminals. Look at what we're seeing right now in the United States. Who are the crazy people out in the streets trying to defend violent criminals, violent psychopaths, that judges that keep letting them off are all women? It's the women going, don't be mean to the hatchet wielding.
It's not normal women. When I watch them, I see witches and magicians and Satanists. That's what I see.
Well, that's what they are. And what happens is we tell girls growing up, you've got to do well in school and you've got to go to university, because if you don't have a degree in your own career, some awful man is going to come and exploit you and control you and abuse you. So they all go to school. I think 60% of the degrees in this nation now are earned by women, and women hold the majority of college debt in America now. I think it's the same, similar in almost all the Western nations. And so you end up with this little factory that cranks out Marxist feminist women who think that people in authority are bad. The white guy with the badge is the evil guy that we have to defeat. And the hatchet wielding maniac who just got here from Somalia yesterday and is chopping up kids in the street, we have to protect him, right? Because he's underprivileged and
systemic
he's oppressed.
racism.
Yes, he's oppressed. So we have to help and enrich those people at the detriment of our, it's total insanity, and it is satanic inversion. But that's because the dominant political force in our country stems from Luciferianism and Satanism. And all you have to do is not believe Rachel, don't believe me. Go back and read the feminists themselves who tell you that Lucifer was their liberator and the inspiration behind feminism in the 1800s. There's a famous Swedish professor named Per Faxneld who is himself a Luciferian. I've spoken with him on Instagram. I got permission to cite his PhD thesis, which is a book you can buy on Amazon. It's called Satanic Feminism. And he describes how in the 19th century, feminists openly declared that Lucifer was their liberator and their inspiration behind feminism. And women who are remembered as Christians and conservatives, like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, probably the two giants of feminism and suffrage here in the United States, they wrote a book in 1895 called The Women's Bible.
Yes, that's what we talk. That's what you talk about in the chapter 4, the link between suffragette and the la table de séance, we say in French, the séance table. So where these Satanist scammer and witches, they mix, they intertwine with the oligarchic networks of America, and they create conspiracies. They rewrite the Bible to destroy authority and apostolic succession. They have sex with the Vanderbilts, like Mrs. Satan.
Yep.
To influence the stock market. Also, you have the Theosophical Society, Elena Blavatsky, that you talk about, and her war on Christianity. That's all in the chapter 4. And then these guys, these witches, magicians, Satanists, maybe 2-3 generations later, they push the 19th Amendment in the chapter 5. So the real positions of the Wilson is against universal suffrage, not against the women's vote. No, it's exaggerating. Yes, it's important that most women can't vote.
Right.
But that's not the real position. And when you want to be in good faith, you want to attack the real position.
Right. Yeah. if I had a debate with Kathy Barnett, I think her name is. She was Vivek.
I've watched that.
Ramaswamy's. Isn't it crazy? She was the grassroots campaign manager for Vivek Ramaswamy, who is a presidential candidate. And I absolutely just mopped the floor with her to the point that it was a horrible embarrassment for her. I honestly almost felt bad. But then again, this is what they need, right? This is what we need to do. I need to go in and debate these people who think they're conservative Christians and that they're doing what's right, and break down the pillars of what they think they know and believe in and help them understand. She kept arguing the founders wanted this. It just took a while to get there. And I said, if the founders wanted universal suffrage, they would have just granted it at the beginning. It wouldn't have taken 150 years to get there. It only took 150 years to get there because we had to have socialism and communism come in, and then we had to have progressive industrialists fund this stuff and shove it through. Why? Because they had an agenda. What was the agenda? The agenda was to pass the income tax, which we had never had before, to create central banking, which we didn't have before, and to get children in the compulsory education system. Why? And why did these things all happen at the same time? This was all within a few years of each other, between like 1913 and 1920. And it was the same guys. Yeah, it was the same people who met at the Jekyll Island Club and drafted this legislation and came up with these plans. And this is a matter of historical record. Again, it's not Rachel making it up. You can check my sources and verify for yourself. They wanted to create a system where they had a massive workforce of cheap labor, because even then you couldn't import enough people. They're building railroads, they're building skyscrapers, we've got steam engines, and it's this time of industrial infrastructure explosion in this country. And they were bringing in people from China and from Ireland and all kinds of places as workers, but they needed more. And they wanted to follow the Prussian military model. And that's what our public school system was modeled off of, because it creates good soldiers and good factory workers who will respond to bells and schedules and certain inputs and respond like little cogs in a wheel. Great model if you're an industrialist with a lot of big factories and you need people to work for cheap all day long. So if you can get an income tax, that's cool. You can tax people's wages now, which you couldn't do in this country before. And if our founders, who fought a rebellion over tea taxes, knew that, they would be rolling in their graves.
Yeah, no taxes without representation.
Yeah, and so, but once you do that, if you're income taxing people and you're trying to push women to
and you have a fiat
then,
money. Fiat,
yes.
That's really important to have the fiat money system, because without it,
yes,
you can't really inflate the
currency.
The currency in a way people don't understand what's happening.
Right, and so if you can get a public school system in place and make it compulsory, meaning you have to send your kids there unless, and it goes state by state, at least we have states' rights still to some degree in this country. If it weren't for that, we'd be really screwed. Because at least I was living in states where I could homeschool my kids, and so that's what I did. But if you're having to send the kids there, first of all, if mom has to go to work, if we're trying to push all the women to work and
that's
the dads to work, the school becomes free daycare, paid for by tax money. And so while the kids are there all day, they can be indoctrinated with whatever values and messaging the federal government wants, because it's paid for by the Department of Education. And the teachers are trained in the university systems, which have been completely taken over by Marxists. On top of that, now you've got 2 incomes per household to tax instead of just 1. And like you said, you've got the central banking system where you can lend money at interest based on a small amount of holdings. You can loan 10 times what you've actually got. So you have this debt-based economy, and we have a debt-based budget. We've been trying to balance the budget for my whole lifetime. We've been trying to get the country out of debt forever. Every American household now runs on debt. Every single person who owns a house has to have a 30-year plus mortgage, you know. So things have radically changed in the last 120 years, 100 years, and people don't realize that none of those things could have happened without feminism. None of those things could have happened without universal suffrage, without pushing women into the workforce, without telling them that actually motherhood is a ball and chain and marriage is, exploitative and abusive. And what you really need is a college degree, which you're going to take out a loan to get. And you spend all your fertile years in college and starting a career and paying off your debt, and you're in your 30s before you can even start about thinking of family. So now my grandma's generation, the average age of first marriage and baby was 22 years old. My generation now, the average age of first marriage is 31. And people aren't even bothering to start having children until around 31, 32 years old.
And you can't even tell people, maybe it's linked that people, since women start having children later in life, they have less children in life. People,
Right,
they don't want to approve it. They don't want to say, yes, you're right. It's simple.
No.
It's pretty simple.
The knee-jerk reaction, and this is because of billions of dollars in a century of feminist programming. Oh, you don't want women to go to college? Is that what you're saying? You don't want them to be educated? Well, first of all, we have the internet now. You do not need university to be educated.
Especially in soft science.
Yes, and we could get into that, but you can be educated just fine without college. I always say we give women backwards advice. It's not that I want women to be illiterate, uneducated rubes. No, you're going to be the ones having children and you're going to be raising them, and so you should have good knowledge base. You should be intelligent. You should have skills and talents and things that you develop, of course. But women had that before.
You don't need college to do that.
No, but what we had before, like some of the first colleges in the United States were women's seminaries.
Yes, and it was not to learn about soft sciences. It was about culinary practices, how to sew, how to do everything you need in a family. To repair clothes, to do everything you need in these times and days. Now it's all about psychology.
That, and even cultural enrichment type of things. Like a lot of women would go to conservatory and learn how to be fantastic piano players or write poetry or learn literature and writing because you were probably going to be teaching those things to your children. And especially in the upper classes, a lot of men really liked having a woman who could entertain and play piano well or something like that.
The woman I want to marry, it will be easier if she plays the cello. I really like the cello.
I do too.
It's a really big and great instrument.
One of my daughters has a boyfriend who can play the cello, and that's really nice. So it's pretty fancy. So it's not that I want women dumb and uneducated so they're easily controlled. It's got nothing to do with that. It's that we give you backwards advice. Biology wins, and it's inescapable. And as someone who had my first baby at 20 and my last baby in my early 30s, I think I was 32, it's way easier when you're 20. Okay, you can handle long nights of no sleep. Your body bounces back really quickly. Having babies in your 20s is a breeze. It gets harder the older you get. Although, if you start young like I did, the subsequent pregnancies and births are easier than if you have your first in your 30s or 40 years old. Those
and it's
are
proven you will have a better life expectancy. It's proven.
Yes, lower rates of cancer, like all the estrogenic cancers, are lower in women that have a lot of babies and breastfeed. It's very good for you. So we give women backwards advice. And what we tell them to do is take all their fertile years trying to build a career and build independence, and then suddenly flip a switch at 35 and create a family and become a mom. And we don't talk about the psychological toll that takes. That's hard to do. It's hard to spend 32 or 35 years doing everything for yourself on your own schedule, being independent, building this independent life, and then suddenly flip to being a wife and being a mom and having a baby and not being able to plan. Because when you have a newborn, you can plan things, but good luck, because it just, the baby gets sick, or you were up all night with the baby, or the baby's having a bad day and they're cranky. You have to be able to kind of roll with that and adapt. That's easy to do when you're 20. It's really hard to do in your 30s. And I have two groups of my friends where some of us had our kids young and the other half waited and had them much later. And the group that had them much later, all of them say, this is really hard. I wish I had done it younger. I wish I had started sooner. And that the transition into family life was really difficult, and it put a lot of strain on their marriage, and it was hard. So it's like, I'm not saying women shouldn't be educated. I'm not saying you can't do anything else with your life ever besides motherhood. I'm saying we give women terrible advice, and we should tell them, hey, build your family first while you're young. Let your family grow as your husband's career is growing. You know, when you only have one kid and your husband's not making that much, that's fine. But nothing lights a fire under a man like having a child. And then by the time you get to the second and the third and the fourth, your husband's making more money. You can afford to grow a little bit and things like that. Telling them to do everything backwards is setting them up for failure and disaster. And now we have this huge cohort of women who make it into their mid-30s, and they've slept with so many people, and all they've learned about relationships is how to break up. They've never learned how to stay together and make it work. They're really good and really practiced,
but they want to break up. They're searching for reasons to break up.
Yes. And so why would you do that for like 15 years into your adulthood, and then suddenly you're going to find a guy and have the skills to stay together and keep it together long term? You're not. All you've practiced is hopping from guy to guy and breaking up all the time and getting over breakups, and you've gotten really good at that, and you haven't learned how to be a good wife, how to keep a long-term relationship going, how to make it through hurdles and tough spots with someone. And the guys that these girls want all got swooped up a long time ago. So now the dudes that they're looking at pairing up with have children from previous marriages. Maybe they're short. Maybe they don't make a lot of money. Maybe
or they're older like me. I'm almost 40, so I'm searching for below 26, 27 because I want to have a lot of children. And unfortunately, when the women have the same age as myself, I just don't look for them. I don't care.
Exactly. So this is what we're dealing with, and women are miserable. They are more prone to, like, I have pieces on my Substack where I go over like just how bad it is and how awful this has worked out for everyone. I think children are the primary victims, but both men and women are also really harmed by feminism, and the women aren't doing well. They're not, unless you believe idiots like Chelsea Handler who are going to try to convince you that she loves, and maybe she does, but she's like this awful person, right? Like, oh, it's awesome to be 50 and single and live alone, and I just smoke weed all day and I order takeout food and I go on vacations, and it's like, no purpose.
Look at my cats.
Yeah, no purpose, nothing to get you through hard times, no real reason to get up in the morning other than your own hedonism, you know? And it's like, one of the largest groups I get letters from is older women who read my book or see my videos or whatever, and they're heartbroken and they feel like they've been duped and they feel like they've been tricked. Now, I'm not trying to remove agency from women. Myself included, we have made our choices. However, it is the nature of women to kind of follow along with what society tells us. We like to do what we think is going to make us successful in the eyes of society. We follow whatever the hot popular girl is doing. That's generally what most of us are going to do, which is why I'm super happy to see younger ladies like Savannah Stone and a bunch of others on Instagram who are young and they're pretty and they're successful, and they are repeating my messaging with my full blessing. Out there trying to talk sense into young ladies, because the younger girls are going to listen to them. They won't listen to me. I'm too much like their mom.
Or they don't listen to men. They don't.
No, they will never listen to men. They won't. They'll go, he's a man. Of course he's going to say that.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah. And I'm too much like a mom, you know, and I'm not cool. Look at me. I'm sitting here in a t-shirt with my glasses, and I'm not very cool. You know what I mean? So seeing these young, attractive, cool chicks getting the message and going, wait, this feminism stuff is stupid, and it's basically a giant con job. I love seeing that, because I think the younger girls will listen to them more. But a lot of my generation and the boomer generation and even the millennials really fell for the feminism stuff and really thought that the key to happiness was being just like a man, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to compete with the men. I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to be the CEO. I'm going to have the corner office. I'm going to start a business. And they do all that and they get all that. And then they go on TikTok at 40 years old and go, this sucks. I hate my stupid job. I don't want to get up every day and do this crap. I don't like the long hours. I'm exhausted. I cry all the time. And now I don't know what to do. I can't go back. And you can't. That's the thing. As a woman, you can't go back and start over. You can't get your 20s back. You can't get your virginity back. You can't get your low body count back. You can't get your fertility back. Those things, you've got a small window. And that's it.
They've been conned. And in a way, the con is still going on. We're still not at the paroxysm. We're still not at the end because recently, this year, the last month, the Orthodox Church published the new catechism, and they're fighting this year neo-paganism, which is as you said earlier, the biggest religion with the growth presently, if we talk about the numbers. So in a way, during the 18th and the 19th centuries, we've had witches, magicians, necromancers, satanists that were mixing with the oligarch society of America, the big families.
Yes.
They took control of public education. They instaured the tax system, and they created Evil Corp. And then modern women, for the last 60 to 80 years, they were being pouched by these Evil Corp. And I encourage you to watch the TV series Evil. It's 4 seasons. Is that the
name of it?
Yeah, Evil. I will send you a link at the end.
Okay.
It's a 4-season series, and they talked about witchcraft in the way we talked about it here. So witchcraft is mostly bullshit, but sometimes there's some phenomena that we can't really understand at 100%. So it's a really good series that link these two. The part where secret societies and weird people, they use corporate mechanism and medias, social media, to indoctrinate, to initiate children into sex fetishes and other things like that. So it's really important. I think you would be really interested by this teleseries.
Yeah, sounds like it.
On the chapter 7, you talked about the eugenist movement and the link with witchcraft. That was another very, very important chapter because that's where the Wilsons are the best to defend the Trump administration. That's the best argument I've heard what Andrew talked about. How, in a way, because Trump was able to nominate 3 Supreme Court justices, he stopped the Planned Parenthood and most of the abortions in the United States, which is crimes against humanity, which is compared to, we can compare it to the Holocaust for white people, for Christians, for Europeans, in a way.
Yes.
So I can't defeat this argument. If I was American, just because of that, I would have to vote for Donald Trump over and over again because of that.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, people, when they hear this statistic, they always go and fact check me because they can't believe it's true. But about 1/3 of Gen Z around the world was aborted before they were ever born. That's a lot. My next book talks about the Bolshevik Revolution and how feminism and occultism were so prominent within the Bolsheviks. And they had a female leader named Alexandra Kollontai, who was Lenin's commissar for social welfare. And she was one of the first high-level female heads of state, but she also was the first anywhere to legalize abortion and no-fault divorce and completely remove marriage from the church and make it just a certificate granted by the state that could be terminated at will for any reason. And they made abortion not only legal, but paid for in state hospitals right up to birth. And by the time, I think this policy was only around for about a decade or so, by the time Stalin came to power, they had just been through World War I and a famine, so things were already pretty dicey because of that. But they were having 3 abortions for every 1 live birth in Russia at that time. So Stalin had to outlaw it because he was like, there won't be a Russia. Like, we've got to stop this because we're not going to have the numbers. We're just going to be destroyed. We won't exist. And that's what places like South Korea are facing right now. There won't be a South Korea in 100 years if something drastic doesn't happen in that culture. And so many people have been saying, you got to get your book translated into Korean for South Koreans. And I'm going to work on that. I'm going to try to get that done. But it's just, these are the fruits of feminism, and what it always comes down to, women in the West have not just equality. Let's be honest for a minute.
They have privilege.
We have supremacy. We have privilege. We have more rights. We have almost, like Andrew has asked, and I have asked on so many shows and so many panels now, what duties do women have? Because everyone can tell you what men's duties are. Oh, they need to provide, they need to protect, they need to be this way, they need to do these things. Okay, what about women? What are women's duties to anyone outside themselves? And everyone goes, and they think, and they think.
I've seen it more than 10 times already on whatever. It's a big red pill.
They can't come up with anything.
It's a big red pill.
Yeah, it is. So this is the fruits of feminism is you end up with a privileged class of people who are never held accountable for anything. They're told they're perfect the way they are and they don't need to change for anyone. They're told that nothing is ever their fault and that they can destroy a man's child at will, and that one thing is the main indicator of how free they are. Unless you can terminate a man's child at will for any reason, you are not free. You are oppressed. They don't really care about like the wage gap. They don't really care about financial equality or any of this other stuff. That stuff's all like way down the list. What they really care about and have always cared about is abortion. And I cite a lot of the early feminists who said this very thing. They said a woman cannot be free until she has the right to decide if and when people are born at all. Exactly. That's what they think. So that's what they really care about. And you see that with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, even though there's a lot of states that you still can have an abortion. I live in Texas right now where abortion is illegal. And we have state representatives, one of whom I argue with on Twitter all the time and constantly debunk her. She's a Democrat and she runs around saying women are dying because they don't have access to abortion. Women are just dropping dead everywhere because we can't get abortions, which is not true. The data does not show this at all. And they'll use sneaky framing, which is what feminists always do. They have to rely on sneaky framing and trying to frame the conversation in a certain way in order to make their facts fit. So they'll say things like, well, women hesitate to get health care when they're pregnant and, say they have a hemorrhage or something. They hesitate to get health care because they're not sure if they'll be accused of aborting the pregnancy if something is wrong. First of all, that's an unfalsifiable claim. You can never prove to me that women on a large scale are scared to get prenatal care because they'll be accused of abortion if something goes wrong with the pregnancy. You can't. So they're using an unfalsifiable claim. None of that is in the data. We don't see maternal mortality rising in pro-life states where abortion is legal and lowering in states where it is legal. We haven't seen that reflected in the data. In fact, abortion and the abortion pill is what we're seeing causing more problems. And they will say something like this. This is the trick they use. You always got to watch out for their sneaky tricks. They'll say, maternal mortality is rising for the first time in the United States since we started recording it. And I'll say, you're correct. It is. But why? And they'll say, well, it's probably because women can't get abortions. And so they're not getting prenatal care.
It's because of Trump.
Oh, no.
It's always Trump.
Right. But that's not true. And you can just go to the CDC website, which will tell you that the reason mortality among mothers is rising for the first time since we discovered germ theory is because of advanced maternal age. Women are waiting to start having babies until they are much older and they're using IVF, and that is riskier. It raises the risk for all the complications.
Everything, yeah. It's all about geriatric pregnancy.
Yes, and they'll try to twist it and make you believe it's because women don't have enough access to abortion, when no, it's your feminist policies that are actually endangering women because you're telling them all to wait until they're having geriatric pregnancies. And, young women, I've talked to them before when they say, I'll just wait till I'm older and then I'll do IVF. First of all, girl, do you have any idea how much that costs? Second of all, do you know how brutal and unpleasant it is and how many rounds most people have to do? And third, nobody tells young women that the chances of success using IVF after 40 is less than 10%. So after 40, if you're trying to have your first pregnancy, even with IVF, your chances are really small and you're going to spend a fortune and you're going to put yourself through all kinds of hell and misery. Why? If we care about women, why are we telling them to do this? It's terrible advice. Same thing with birth control.
It's dangerous advice.
It's dangerous advice. And same thing with birth control. We tell all the young women, just get on birth control. Oh, you have acne? Get on birth control. You have headaches? Get on birth control. You just want to be promiscuous? Get on birth control. We don't actually educate them about all the side effects of birth control, how it can affect your mental health, how it can affect your physical health, how it can affect your mate selection, and how it can affect your future fertility. There's a large minority of women who start birth control and are on it for a long time and do not regain their fertility once they get off of it. And I've never once had a doctor inform me about those risks. They prescribe it to me. They prescribe it to me like it's vitamin C.
Yep.
You know. So I don't think feminism is pro-woman. I don't think we're protecting women. And I have a piece on my Substack called 45 Years of Data Proving That Men Were Not the Threat, something like that. And it goes over all the data on how women are more abused domestically. Like domestic abuse is not better because we have no-fault divorce. It just shifted all the abusive relationships to cohabitating ones. If you're in a cohabitative relationship, you're 40% more likely to experience domestic violence than if you're married. Nobody tells young women that. We tell them, oh, it's safer to live with your boyfriend. It's not. It's by a factor of 10 to 12 times less safe than being married. Same thing with children. Children and abuse. Yeah, the 45 years of data right there at the top. I go over the most comprehensive data we have over the last 45 years and break it down and show you how both women and children suffer all kinds of abuse and neglect at higher rates to the extent that you break down the family. So, any child living with biological married parents is 10 to 12 times safer than any child in any other sort of living situation. And the worst one is usually single mom plus live-in boyfriend.
The data can't be refuted. You see it when we changed from 80% kids that were born inside marriage, and now it's less than 20%. That's when society collapsed. In this lapse of time, when we passed from 80% to 20%, that's where everything ended in a way. And they use ideology left and right to push, to divide us one against each others. I understood recently that most ideologies are simply narratives and utopias made to divide the population, like sports. So in the empire, the Holy Roman Empire, you would have like a mini sport event with flags and everything, and you would have factions in big cities in Italy that would beat each others to death before fascism was a thing. It's just a remake of the same thing. And they use ideology to divide us because people don't understand the foundations of the white European, North American society, which is Christianity. And I've heard you recently talk about how you are a bit more conservative than Andrew on that topic because you were pro-Byzantine Empire. So it's really funny because I want personally to build a barony in Quebec so I can unite Quebec under a monarchy. So we have.
I like that plan. Yeah,
it's a great plan.
Yeah, Andrew will tell you himself. He'll be like, my wife is a little bit more. Jake Rattlesnake always says Rachel's more based than Andrew. He says Rachel's more based than Andrew is.
With a funny voice.
Yes, with this funny fake Australian accent. I don't know about that. It's just, the thing about it is that women shouldn't govern. So it's not like I can tell the men how to fix this. I can't protect persons or property. I can't govern. I wouldn't want
but
to.
But you can use a weapon. You know how to use guns. I heard that.
That's true. Yes, I do.
Better
I
than
was a firearms instructor. Yes. So in a lot of ways, I'm a strange person to be up here talking about this stuff because I'm a tomboy and I like a lot of traditionally male things. And I'm not the most traditional, dainty, feminine woman. I'm very maternal, and I love being a good wife, and I love being a good mom. And to me, when I think about this trad wife thing, my Twitter bio says not trad, not conservative, for a couple of reasons. I think those labels don't mean anything anymore. When somebody says trad or conservative, nobody knows what the hell we're conserving. Whose traditions are we conserving? What have we ever conserved in America? Not very much. Nobody knows what that means.
I like how Tim Pool tells us that. He say the Republicans are like, slow there, Democrats.
Yeah, slower Democrats. Yep, going at a slower speed. That's true. And I don't consider myself traditional because I'm part of this modern ethos. I came out of it. I've not always done everything perfectly. I've not always been as based as I am now. However, I was never a leftist. I never had like a leftist Marxist phase or anything. I was a libertarian when I was young, and then I started reading Hoppe, and some of those things started breaking and falling away for me a little bit. I think he's not even a monarchist, but I think he turned me on to that with Democracy, the God That Failed early on. And then I started reading like Pat Buchanan and some other things. And I was like, yeah, I think this whole democracy stuff is kind of a scam. And I don't think it's going to. Yes, it's very overrated. So Andrew he's pragmatic yes. more than I am, of course. Yes. I'm working in the theoretical realm.
That's
right?
his role. He has to be pragmatic because he's the figure of the Wilson family.
And I always say if we were born in a time when he could have been a warlord, that's probably what he would have been, or at least a general. Like if we were born in the time of Templars or something, I think he would have been like a general. He's great at strategy. He's really good at strategy, and he's really good at projecting long term. He's a great chess player. Any type of strategy games, he's really good at, and it's hard to beat him, whether it's a video game or a board game. If it's a strategy game,
against him.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck beating him in chess or anything like that. So he's very good at strategy, and his job right now is to try to direct the American right in the way that he thinks it should go and figure out a way for it to recapture the institutions and to win. He's the guy you should listen to on that. I'm talking about in a theoretical, ideological, if I could have my way, what I would want sort of a thing. And I do have this historical perspective. Not that Andrew doesn't know history. He definitely does. But
it's linked. To understand the strategy, you have to learn history. So real history is military history. And military history in the last 60 years is all about sexual revolution and how it destroyed patriarchy. The benevolent patriarchy, the father figure, the church, the apostolic succession, the institutions that were created almost a millennia ago in our society. And so that's what you talk about in the chapter 8 and 9. And you end up with modern witchcraft and MK Ultra. Ultra. So we've had a hearing six or 7 days ago in Congress talking about oversight, mind control, and accountability, uncovering the truth of the CIA MK Ultra project. It's a great thing that we've been waiting so long for this interview because it's just been out. I've asked Grok to resume the 20 best bullet points of it. So it's all about, it's the same we've heard if we read the books. So all about the book is the drugs, how you use drugs and shock therapy, torture to erase memories. And then you can reprogram people. You can add another layer of memory. It started after World War II. And what I've learned is that some of these researchers were literally from Operation Paperclip, so they were Nazi, reutilizing their research for United States and the CIA, and they had license to kill, and they had the right to use their experiment without any follow-up, without any accountability. In the back of the using the American public, and also Quebecers. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, because that's a big thing, and it's still being uncovered in 2025, 2026. We have a big class action lawsuit coming up in the following years. And I think you will have to come to Montreal and be interviewed in the Lux Media offices with my boss, because it's really important. I think you should do a documentary on that.
You know, here's the thing. You've uncovered my secret power level here, because I got really deep into MKUltra research for a couple of years, and I still have interviews I recorded with one woman who was herself in the MKUltra experiments, and then a few others who were the children of MKUltra patients in Quebec. And I did a ton of research on that, and I was going to do a documentary. And the problem with it is I didn't have the connections, I didn't have the resources at the time. I kept trying to reach out to people and get something going, and nobody really wanted to follow through. And a lot of people don't want to touch this. A lot of people don't want to go there because it gets very dark. It can get very scary, and they're worried about governments being involved and intelligence agencies being involved, and I wasn't able to get traction. Then I moved across country, and my book took off, and I had to do a bunch of crazy stuff there. But this is still on my list, because these people need justice. The things that were done to these people are so insane. I actually have the medical records of one of these patients, and they show in the logs like everything they were doing to her. Not only that, people don't realize this wasn't just happening in the US and Canada. This was happening under the World Health Organization in every Western country. Australia had its own MKUltra program. The UK had its own. Other European nations had their own, and the World Health Organization knew about it, which is something I've never said before on a stream or anything, so you get the big exclusive. But I have the documents showing that the World Health Organization was made aware of these programs and knew that they were happening, and did not stop them, but provided funding. They actually helped fund these. And this was largely a product of the Cold War and different governments around the world thinking that other governments were working on, like the big excuse for our CIA in America was that the Russians were doing this stuff. Whether they were or they weren't is a little bit tough to prove, just because there was so much stuff in the Soviet Union during this time period that was agitprop, that was fake.
A lot of disinformation.
It takes a lot to sort through to verify what is and isn't true. So I would probably actually need like help from a Russian speaking person to really know. But I don't think it's super important, because even if the Russians were, I don't think it justifies a lot of the stuff that was happening and what they did. And the other big takeaway from these experiments was that they figured out that when they have mass communication, they don't need to use drugs. They don't need to work on a person-by-person basis. They did start that way to see what worked. But now that we have telecommunications, we have things like the internet, they figured out through the MKUltra experiments how they can use things like binaural beats. There's a piece on my Substack, which is probably the darkest, scariest one on there. The only person who's ever even wanted to talk to me about it is my friend David Patrick Harry. It's about the explosion in furries and transgender people, and how there are these mysterious, nefarious programs floating around on the internet that nobody knows who is funding them. Nobody knows who created them. They're completely untraceable, and they are put into porn search engines. So if you go to Pornhub or something like that, and you start looking at trans porn, you will eventually stumble upon something called sissy hypno porn. This is the type of material that was responsible for transitioning the two brothers who wrote the Matrix movies.
So it works.
It works.
It works. You can really use sounds and visual effects to enhance the sex, drug, and rock and roll shit type of sorcery, and then you can initiate some sex fetishes this way.
Yes. Yeah. What they found out. So like there was a doctor in Louisiana. I think his name was Dr. Robert Heath, and he did a lot of the MK Ultra experiments with homosexuals where these were gruesome things. He would literally open their skulls and hook up electrodes to their brain and force them to watch heterosexual pornography. And then even he would bring in prostitutes and have them perform sex acts, like female prostitutes, have them perform sex acts repeatedly while stimulating certain parts of the brain that they thought would be responsible for helping to rewire like sexual desire and things like that. And it worked. It worked. The one thing he found was you can indeed rewire a homosexual man's brain to be heterosexual and to desire heterosexual sex again. So that's interesting. But what the larger implication of that is that female or human sexuality is extremely malleable. It's extremely easily influenced, and especially in certain subsets of the population. So the other thing that came out of MK Ultra is that there's a small portion at the top of people who are very extremely difficult to brainwash or influence. They're very resistant to propaganda.
Like during
They're
COVID.
very hard to... Yes. Then there is a big chunk in the middle that probably is like 70% of people that they are influenced, and you can definitely steer them and push them in different directions with enough propaganda and with things like drugs or binaural beats or certain medications, stuff like that. There's also a small cohort at the bottom who are extremely susceptible to this sort of thing, who are extremely easily radicalized and propagandized and brainwashed. You don't even need drugs for those people. All you need is enough repetitive messaging and like incentive reinforcement. So if they played audio tracks over and over again with a certain message to these kinds of people, and then there was some sort of positive reinforcement, some sort of dopamine, and this is what porn does. You're listening to and watching and consuming this stuff while physically gratifying yourself, and when you reach orgasm, that is like flooding your brain with dopamine. And so whatever is pushing that button, it's just like cocaine. It's just like lab rats with cocaine. If there are certain people that are very susceptible to addiction and propaganda and all these things, their brains are just really easy to plasticize and mold. And those are the kind of people.
Incrementation, reinforcement.
Yes, exactly. And in the piece on my Substack, I go into depth on like what things are in these programs. They use some really insidious stuff that comes straight out of MK Ultra, and the people who are using those programs, there are tons of Reddit threads. Not that Reddit is super reliable, but I'm not the first person who found these. Other people have found these, of people saying that this stuff seriously messed them up, like destroyed them mentally, and that they were having a really tough time deprogramming it, getting out of it. It's really crazy stuff. Some of it I can't even say on YouTube, so I'll just leave it a little vague. But there is that cohort of the population, and that's why you see something like right now we had the Tyler Robinson preliminary hearing.
That's where I wanted to go in the end of the interview, tying back everything back to reality, the mental health crisis, opioid overdose crisis, single mother epidemic, OnlyFans epidemic, fertility crash, and the Tyler Robinson, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, linked to what we talked about here, the MK Ultra program. The real conspiracy, in my opinion, isn't about the freaking microphone exploding.
Right.
Right. It's not about Egyptians. It's not about the
maroon
French
shirts,
the French legionaries. It's not about this. It's about how you have witches, magicians, Satanists that use technology, social media, and what I call personally the magic mirrors. Smartphones are magic mirrors, like in Snow White.
Black Mirror.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
And these magic mirrors they, for some people, maybe 1 to 5% of the population, they are extremely vulnerable. So the algorithm, the jinns, the genie, the demons, they target these vulnerable people to make them believe something that which is provably false, demonstrably false, which is the exploding microphone. And in this time, the real conspiracy is how Tyler Robinson and all their circle were literally targeted by the porn site, by the Discord forums, by all these algorithms to orient them, to push them in a way that they will act on these impulsions. That's how I see that.
That's absolutely correct. You nailed it. We no longer need to have the CIA go into mental hospitals and recruit certain people and create a Sirhan type of assassin. We don't need that. We have Discord. We have sissy hypnoporn. We have these sort of things. And I think Turkey Tom is a YouTuber who did he's done the most extensive video I've seen so far on Tyler Robinson's boyfriend and how he got into the furry stuff, and how Tyler Robinson, who was never homosexual before, like he and the roommate were not homosexual when they moved in together, but they were doing drugs, especially the roommate. Apparently, this is all alleged. This is all according to people who knew them, people who were in this Discord with them talking about this stuff, and saying that they slowly, through social media, Discord, and gaming Discords and things like that, got into this type of material. And then for the roommate, there was drugs involved with it. And this kid's slow descent into madness and self-destructive behavior and getting extremely radicalized, that we are these trans, gay, furry people, and it's the Charlie Kirks of the world who are pushing their evil Christian controlling patriarchy on us and telling us we're not real human beings, trying to take away our rights, trying to erase trans people. And this, I do think it's far more plausible that this kid became convinced that he had to be the hero in this video game or this story and take this guy out in order to save the friends and whatever that he had who had found these identities through this sort of garbage, right? It's far more plausible. It's far more likely. And I'm surprised we haven't seen more of it by now, to be honest. We've seen a lot of these like trans shooters. We've seen a lot of them doing violent, crazy stuff, but it's almost surprising that we haven't seen more of it, given like the programs that I documented. There's one called Bambi Sleep that I document in the Substack article that I wrote. Like, these are sophisticated programs. They have very sophisticated implemented messaging that for the vulnerable people can deeply radicalize and program them. And people don't want to believe that. They don't want to believe that that stuff's out there, or that there are people who can be brainwashed like that, or led to psychosis through various things. And these programs will tell the person to start hormones. It will tell them to use drugs. It will tell them you should start doing your own pornography to pay for your sex change, things like, and it doesn't start like that. It starts very innocuous, and it's this slow transition. It's this constantly leveling up just a little bit into weirder and more extreme stuff. And the reason that works, and the reason it's so effective to use through like a pornographic type of a medium, is because everybody knows when you have like a porn addiction, it's similar to drugs in that you need a stronger dose to get the same response after time, right? You start looking at normal stuff, and in the beginning that works, and then after a while it's not as effective, so you look at something a little weirder, a little more fetishy, and that gives you more jollies, and you get into weirder and weirder stuff. This is like super commonly well known that a lot of people end up looking at stuff that 5 years ago they would have thought was disgusting, and now it's getting them off, for lack of a better, sorry for the language, everybody, but that's how this stuff works. And it's the same. So it's a very great vehicle for radicalizing people politically or ideologically to do violence or to do other things. And it is a type of witchcraft. Honestly, it really is.
And it would work in the Middle Ages. Witches would radicalize people with their vagina. They would do that. They were strong enough in the Force like Jedis.
Pretty much. Yeah. Those were the people that were doing the crazy sex stuff, the crazy sex parties and whatnot, the orgies under the moon and all that. That's all real stuff. That's not like made up. Witches had full moon orgies with people and things like that. And they would do sex spells and sex magic. Aleister Crowley famously popularized sex magic and said that it was the most effective kind because when you orgasm, it's this really insanely strong dopamine response, and it gets people very hooked on these sort of things. It gets people in an easily influenced position. So yeah, it's
Aleister Crowley, which was being financed by CIA and MI6.
Yes,
now we know.
And was a secret agent. Yes, he was. And I talk about people who came out of the Crowleyan cults and how they promoted feminism in Hollywood too in the book. So yeah, this stuff is all connected and there's nothing new under the sun, which is why I started the book at the beginning of time, basically, and it goes all the way to now. And you can see these common threads and these consistent things throughout every period of history and in every culture. And you ask yourself, how could that be? When you first get into conspiracies, right? You're trying to figure that out. How can this be so consistent throughout all these times and places? And I believe as a Christian, it's because the same spirits are behind this stuff. It's the same demons that have been around forever, and they know our weaknesses and they know what works and they know how to influence human beings. And this is the kind of stuff that's actually going on right now. And feminists themselves are the ones who will tell you that witchcraft is their official religion. Luciferianism, Gnosticism, all the occult religions are very feminism friendly, and Christianity is patriarchal. Now, we do have a place in Christianity for women, especially, this is my other beef with Protestants, right? Because they just got rid of female monasticism. They don't want to venerate the Mother of God. She's not divine. We don't worship her. She's not a goddess, but she is the Ark of the New Covenant. She is the chief of saints. She is mother and virgin at the same time. She's the female archetype that we need. And if you get rid of her, you don't have anything left but witchcraft and goddess worship and occult religion for women to look to.
I think the real title is intercessor. She's the biggest and strongest intercessor to join Christ. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And so the first question is, how could this happen? The second question is how to destroy these circle of witches, see these coven of magicians and all these demons. And that's why we founded the Inquisition. I believe, as you are, as you do, I believe that we really need religion as a weapon and as a defense mechanism, as a shield of faith, because for the first thing, these witches, they always react to the name of Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
and you prove your point when you do that. When you do a real good exorcism in a TikTok invasion, you see it. And people, they really feel it. Even in virtual setting, they feel it. You feel the tension, and you don't like that. What the fuck is wrong with you? Calm down, lady. Calm down. So what can we do is rebuild community through religions. That's the only solution we have. And so I thank you for participating into this interview. If you want to know more, you can do your part, like in Starship Troopers, and join the Crucible, the Crucible.video. You can also reach Rachel's newsletter on Substack. It's really important to motivate and join the real fight, because you've been laying down foundations for part of the MAGA front for some years now, since the start of the COVID, approximately. And right now you're doing something nobody was doing, which is fighting a coven of witches behind the conspiracies of Charlie Kirk assassination in Turning Point USA. And right now we may have, I don't know, maybe you will give us a scoop. What is happening with that? I've heard Andrew talking about how he's coaching a new generation of Turning Point USA ambassadors. I've heard him talk about how maybe it was one of his demands that the feminist summit of Turning Point USA was canceled. Was it?
Kind of. So, yeah, I'll give you the scoop. So we did go down to Turning Point headquarters in Arizona a couple weeks ago for Andrew and Rob Knorr to do training for this big new crop of young debaters who are going to try to carry on the Kirk legacy and go back out to the college campuses and debate leftists. They're calling it the Pick Up the Mic Initiative. And after, once Charlie was assassinated, it left this void, and it left TPUSA in this weird position because Charlie really truly, like, now that I've been there and seen kind of how things work, he was the guy who kind of did everything. Everybody else there has their job for sure. They got marketing people, and they've got personnel who hire people and fire people, and they've got people who put together the podcasts and put together the events, and it's a big organization, and they do a lot, and they have outreach and all this sort of thing. But the guy who knew how to debate and the guy who had the ideological vision was Charlie, and it left this big gap.
One man army. We have a saying in hockey, joueur de concession, concession player. It's all about him.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, he led the charge, and so it was like, what are we going to do now? And a mutual friend, I didn't even know this until last night. I did an X space, and one of my friends, Josiah, came up and he was like, hey, I'm the guy that gave Andrew Colvett you guys' number and told him he should talk to you guys about helping with this. Because this younger crop of guys, this is what we learned during the course of the training. It was not training to debate Candace Owens or the assassination stuff. It was training the college age kids how to debate leftists and progressives and how to take back the universities from these crazy Marxists who have dominated them since the 60s. That's the goal. That's what Charlie was trying to do. That's what we're trying to help TPUSA continue to do. We found out that because they love conservative media and they watch a lot of conservative media, they don't actually know the progressive or leftist positions nearly as well as they thought they did. So Andrew was like, all of you are going to go into Discord and you're going to listen to leftists all day. You're going to listen to them argue with each other. You're going to argue with them. You're going to practice. You're going to learn the progressive worldview inside and out, because you can't defeat it if you don't know what they really believe. And they're going to get you, and they're going to kick the shit out of you. He was tough on them. And he was like, this is where you're failing.
The women.
Well, yeah, we had women and guys. It was a much smaller group of women. It was very male dominated, which I do think is good, because there's a reason I'm like an undefeated female debater. It's because there's very few of us. There's just not very many women who want to debate, because it's very combative and it's very confrontational. And that's not, most women are like, I just want to have a conversation. Can we just talk? And some of the girls after the training were kind of like, I think I'll just work behind the scenes, and I think I'll just do some nice podcasting and conversations, and that's fine. We need people to do that too. But Andrew was like tough on these kids and was like, here's where you suck. Here's where your weaknesses are. Here's what you need to be doing to fix them. And he kind of treated it like a boot camp, really. And they loved it. These guys loved it. They were like, this was amazing. Now I know what I got to do. I know where the holes in my game are. I know how I can get better. And it worked great. It was wonderful to watch. It was really inspiring.
No financial gain for Andrew. That's what he said.
Well, he did. He got paid to do the training, but it was like pay that you would get for a day of training. I see insane.
It's not real money, because there's a lot of money in there.
Now. Yeah. Well, Stu Peters, I guess, is running around telling people Andrew got $800,000. to work for TPUSA, I was like, I guess I'm getting that kitchen remodel I wanted.
Yeah.
No,
You're taking over. The Wilson is taking over Turning Point USA. It's been happening. You wanted it.
Well, I'm not saying we're taking over, but I will say that Erica and Andrew Colvett and everybody else who was in a position to do things there, they wanted to know our genuine thoughts and our genuine criticisms, because Andrew and I have been critical of TPUSA in the past and of Charlie in the past for specifically Zionism, feminism, and some of the big tent Republican things where it's like, oh, we want all the gays and we want all this, and we're very afraid to criticize, and we want to make the Republican Party like this big tent project where everybody who's not woke is there. And we, like, I gotta say, on their behalf, they were very receptive to our criticism. We're not there running stuff or anything like that, but they were like, no, tell us, like, give us your toughest criticism and tell us where you think we're going wrong. I did a whole podcast with Andrew talking about the feminism stuff, and he asked me, like, what do you think of the TPUSA Young Women's Leadership Summit? And I said, I think it should be a young man's leadership summit. He said, where do you think we're going wrong? How do we get less of the feminine? He let me do a whole thing about feminism and talk all about it, and even invited me back. So he was really, really open to letting me talk to his audience and letting my criticisms and letting me explain. And I talked to Erica about the same things, and she was very much in agreement. And Andrew talked to them about, look, if you're expecting us to suddenly support Zionism, that's not going to ever happen. We're Orthodox. We are never going to support, you know, Zionism or like the evangelical Israel is our greatest ally stuff. We think there's problems with that, and they were very open to that.
You can't brainwash Orthodox people into Zionism. It's not possible.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And you know, I'm not saying they're going to do everything we said, but I am saying I give them a ton of credit for having us out, spending a lot of time with us, listening to our thoughts and our arguments. And it's like people who are suddenly accusing Andrew and I of being shills for TPUSA. Oh, we've switched teams and we're Zionists now. We got the call. We're getting the 7K from the Israelis. All this stuff is so insane because, like, no, we went there because they wanted to hear
exactly
our criticisms and our thoughts.
It's the big
and don't
debate.
You want them to do that? Don't
exactly.
You want us? We're two of the best debaters in the country right now. Don't you want us to go there and make our case to them? And don't you want them to listen? Now, let's say they go, that's nice, Wilsons, but we're sticking with the Zionism and we're sticking with the feminism. We tried.
Yeah. At least you tried.
It's never going to happen that they're going to convert us to supporting those things when we won't and we can't. But the fact that they had us out to talk about it, I think is really encouraging. And I would love to help them if they want more of our help on these things. Why would you not want us doing that? And why would you not want Andrew, who is the best in the world pretty much at debating leftists, to help them keep the universities away from the Marxists? Like, why just hand that whole system over to the left? Which is exactly why Andrew went on stream a few days ago and exposed that there's these leftist organizations like Unfuck America, Act Blue, Ground Game. These are all leftist, Marxist, Democrat-funded organizations who are pushing Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, Baron Coleman, and all the Kirk conspiracy stuff. Why? Why are they getting millions in funding from Act Blue? And they are so supportive of all of these conspiracy theories, okay? So regardless of if you like TPUSA or not, you think they're an evil Zionist organization, you need to look at the fact that leftists are pushing the assassination conspiracy theory stuff because it helps them, okay? And the last thing you should want is for the largest, most influential American conservative organization that's out here on college campuses.
A real grassroots movement. Without that, without the walk-away movement, without all these guys that were doing door-to-door to enlist Republicans for the last cycles, Donald Trump wouldn't have won the
and
election.
we wouldn't. Look, Trump has a lot of flaws. and I know nobody likes this Iran war, but we have net zero migration in the United States for the first time in my whole life and before, okay? Over half a century now. For the first time, we have more people leaving than we have coming in. We have a sealed, locked down southern border that almost no one is getting across. That's never happened. No, there's not a physical wall, but who gives a shit? There's nobody getting across that southern border.
It was never about the all physical wall anyway, if you learn about military strategy. But it's all about talking points. We've told it so many times today. And I'm really glad we had that talk. I would love to have another one later in the year, or when you publish your next book.
Yeah.
I thank you again for your generous time, and I reinstate my wish to work with the Crucible to defeat these hordes of succubus demons, witches, magicians, and necromancer, because without working together, without networking all across European countries, Canada, United States, you can't really defeat all these people, because they use these transnational borders to attack us from behind. Because you've said that the southern border is closed, but since 5 years ago, 2019, 2020, 2021, the real problem for fentanyl crisis, opioid, methamphetamine, guns, it's all coming from Canada now. And that's why we need to talk about it, because right now the real vulnerability for the next 10 years is coming from us, and you need to annex us.
You know what? It is kind of, you guys have some really crazy stuff going on up there, and we should talk about it. We should do that. But yeah, like, just to sum up everything, Andrew and I can't be bought. I'll say that right now. Neither of us are very materialistic people. He's doing great for himself without ever having to have sold out. Why would he start now? You know, our goal, we want to support the church. We want to support the Orthodox Church in America. We want children raised in intact homes. We want people to have marriages that work again. And in order to do that, you're going to have to restore marriage as a sacrament of the church, not just a certificate by the state. And we want to restore general sanity and stability to our country, because we have kids, we hope to have many grandkids, and we give a shit about the future. We care about it. That's why we're doing this. We're not doing this because we want Zionist money or people who think that we're, you know, shills for Russia or something because we're Orthodox. There's all kinds of insane conspiracy theories. We're staying true to what we believe in and what we care about, because there's no benefit to any of this for us unless we can help achieve some of those goals. Like, when I die, who cares what money I have? I care what legacy I left for my kids and my grandkids, and I want them to look back and be like, my grandma and grandpa really did some cool stuff, you know, and things might be a lot worse if they hadn't tried their best to move the needle on a lot of these things. That's what we're doing this for. I know that sounds corny. I know people don't believe in anything anymore. People are so nihilistic. They think that everyone's a sellout. They think that everybody's a shill. I know, I hear it every day, but that's really what I care. Listen, if I just wanted to make money, I could have been the most evil feminist you'd have ever seen. I could have been the best feminist debater. I could have picked the bad side and
we
worked
would
for them.
sell the war in Gaza in a heartbeat. We would tell everybody how the Palestinians need to be. Oh, I won't say the word because on YouTube.
Right.
But that's what I say on TikTok. I tell them, the Zionists, if you want to learn to sell the war and the genocide, you have to buy me off. Surprisingly, they don't want. They don't want, because I use the word genocide. Because if you want to work for them, you can't use it. You can't.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just, look, if Andrew ever decided to go dark side, it would be real bad. It would be really bad, and he could be so effective. But, you know, We picked the hardest thing to do. Every day I ask myself, why didn't I just show people how to do glitter fingernails and save myself all this trouble, right? Why couldn't I have a YouTube where I share crafts or recipes? You know what I mean? I'm like, I have so many days where I'm like, why did I do this to myself? I get death threats all the time. I have people that hate me. There's constantly people trying to expose me. They call me all kinds of things. So it's like, no, there's not enough money in it. There's not enough money in this for me to be doing it for that. And I do care about the future.
It's too late to buy yourself. It's too late. I've been traumatized because of the COVID, and I don't believe these politicians, the journalists, these important people will save me. Only us can save ourselves with the help of Jesus Christ. Thanks to you again, Rachel. We'll do that again.
Thank you.
And I had a real blast.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
In the alleys of the city where the cats are prowling, supernatural figures appear with eyes full of fury. They live in the darkness outside of reason and of faith. The witches of the weak who hide the truths of history. The witches of the weak who labor for the powerful with their complicity. Come the lies and the weaknesses. They call themselves guardians of knowledge, defenders of society. The witches of the weak who light the path to utopia. They police the discourses, the whispers, the glances, the silences. They veil the lines of power, the currents that tip all the balances. They see themselves as Disney princesses at the center of the universe. The witches of the weak who reinvent the world without end. The witches of the weak, prostitutes of the all-powerful with their complicity. Come the lies and the weaknesses. They call themselves guardians of knowledge, defenders of the truth. The witches of the weak who light the path to utopia. The witches of the weak, prostitutes of the all-powerful. The witches of the weak toward the path of utopia. Witches who police the discourses, the silences, the glances. It's the time of the witches of the week. With inquisitors